following material is copyright 2023 by Higher Alignment and Alignment Technologies. All reproduction and distribution are strictly prohibited without prior written consent. For more information, please contact us at higheralignment.com. Welcome to Higher Alignment and our free introductory class for harmonious interactions, creatively connecting using common neutral ground tools, autonomy, boundaries, and flow. This is the first part of a three-part series called Inner and Outer Presence with Common Neutral Ground. In today's intro class, we'll be discussing the common neutral ground presence, how mutual respect, mutual esteem, and radiant self-unifying love are the lubricant for effortless mutual creative flow, with Larry Byram, Sandy Jakewith, and Tom Fagiano.
Hello, everyone. I want to welcome you here. For the people who don't know, my name is Larry Byram, and I'm going to be talking about the various ways in which we can have a better creative flow with people. And particularly, I'm going to be focusing on the new techniques that I've been experimenting with over the last 2-3 years and how they enlarge our capacity to be present with other people. So the goal here is to give you realistic tools, even though these are going to sound a little bit more abstract from some of the previous classes we did. You know, when I first started teaching common neutral ground, I was really focused on, changing the structure and the way we connect. And now I'm just working on the presence of who we are. And it's also a matter of enjoying the process, not putting a lot of attention on what we're saying, but just being who we are and finding the natural rhythm with other people. And that's the goal of the process. One other thing I want to say is I'm bringing into this class and bringing into all the classes a more breathing practice. And the reason we're going to breathing practice is because that helps expand our energy in a common neutral ground. And so we will be talking about particular types of breathing and how to best do that. It's the guideline we're using is Michael Brown's book, The Presence Process. So if you are aware of that book, I would really highly recommend it for reading. And if you haven't seen it before, you might want to start exploring it. Chris has the book that she's showing you right now on the screen.
And Larry's going to be using the revised edition. So it's possible to get both copies, revised and unrevised, but all the audio stuff is the revised edition, both the Kindle and the audio book. And for anybody that takes the class that wants a copy of the audio book, the publisher gave us the rights to distribute that for people to use in class. So you can let me know.
So thank you for that.
Right. Namaste Publishing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. Special thanks to them. So moving on here, I just want to say a couple of things about the breath process just for a moment. And the breathing practice we're encouraging is a rhythmic flow and with no pauses in taking in air or letting out air. So you're basically in a motion. And when you do that, what it is it keeps you more in the present moment. You have more difficulty hanging out in defensive and, pretenses and also conditioning kind of behaviors, because you're not using the past or the future as your reference. And so what we're doing is we're taking the pressure out of timing and we're just being in a flow. And that is one little process here that refinement that we're going to be putting into this process to make it much more effective and have it start doing some of the work for us. Because who we are will naturally heal if we allow ourselves to be present with what's going on with us. If we're constantly taking in new input and not processing it, then we get more and more reactive, we get more and more defensive, we operate by agendas, and then, no one can please us, and we can't please anybody. We don't have the capacity just to be present with them. Okay, so let's move ahead here. First of all, I want to talk about, really what the lubricant behind everything is, our being who we are in terms of our authentic expression, and being able to express ourselves in terms of life energy, love energy, and light energy, as it's said here. Now, these relate to various degrees of our modalities. Modalities are our sensations, feelings, emotions, and thoughts. Those are the basic ones. And the goal of modalities is to help us integrate our experience. If we have a process where we're being more connected to our body, that means our feelings and sensations are connected. Guess what? Neither one of the feelings or the sensations gets out of balance, and we don't go into a demand that other people believe us or need to be attached to what we're attached to. And if we're, dealing with thoughts and, emotions really are the desire to pursue certain thoughts, if you think about it that way, we don't have to assert ourselves on others and believe that we know more than they do. It's really disheartening when you're with people and you can't actually be heard, and because they're so locked into their defensive reality. And so what we're asking people to do is to consider, there's a time for breathing, a time for listening, a time for speaking, and a time for breathing. I'm just giving you a little flow there. And then finally, we don't want to be caught in love as an addiction. We want to be caught in love as an expression. And we would call that radiant self-unifying love, rather than using love to confirm ourselves or to validate how being with somebody else is going to make us better. So the interesting thing of this whole process, if you think about it, is when we are more balanced in ourselves, we naturally can create a more neutral, common neutral ground. And the ground itself is just a place to work with and connect with others that's independent of our own space. And the question is, why would you do that? The real answer is that you don't want to have your space invaded because it confuses you. It confuses your feelings, your emotions, your thoughts. It can even confuse how you're interpreting yourself on higher levels of knowing, like on the intuitive level, or like straight knowing level, or even unity thinking levels. Those are how we're trying to have interactions that are flowing. So before I go any further here, there must be some questions about what I'm talking about here. And if anybody has any questions, let's start with that. Yes, Katie.
I have a question about the breath, the rhythmic flow of breathing. I've been doing it since you spoke of it. And I'm curious if you suggest it to be a certain speed. Is it supposed to be slower than what our normal rate would be, since we're not pausing at the top and at the bottom? Or what do you suggest there?
Yeah, I've been playing with that for quite some time. And one of the answers I've come up with, at different times, I want to operate at a different rate. And I'm just responding to myself. I'm not responding to the world when I do this. So I'm looking at what is the optimum amount of energy that I have and also what is the optimum amount of energy I can share. What the breathing process does is it helps us to ignite the life energy, which then transfers energy to the light and then to the love energy. And we can look at this in terms of three boundary areas. The life energy is energy, the light is timing, and the love is completely around spatial connection. It's how much can I be there with you without overpowering you and without you overpowering me. We're not trying to compete. We're not trying to prove anything. We're just informing and delightfully finding out there's ways of flowing together. Now, going back to your question, when I'm with somebody that I'm doing more thinking with or I'm doing more process with, I have to slow down in my timing and do deeper breaths. Okay. When I have deeper breaths, it opens up the process. I get less defensive or less attached to, I would guess, my positions, okay, in that situation. So, but other times when I'm just doing my own breathing for myself, I'm working on my energy balance in myself much more, because that's my weakest area, is the energy balance in me. So I've been playing with just doing a lot more breathing than is recommended in the book, because in the book they say 15 minutes in the morning and 15 minutes at night. And I can see there's great advantages to that. But I've been practicing doing it on more of a regular basis through the day and take several hours at a time just doing it. The reason why is it regulates my flow of myself, and it helps me process more of any backlog energies or issues that I may have that I have not resolved. What I'm looking to do is settle into myself more so that I can be there, so that when I do show up, I can show up in a richer way.
Yeah, yeah. So it sounds like when you're alone, you're breathing in such a way to be in sync with yourself, with your own time, space, and energy. And then when you're with others, like if it's a strongly thinking process, you're slowing it down, because my experience is like when it's strongly thinking, the tendency is to speed it up. So the slowing it down is what counterbalances that and creates more of an integrated experience. Is that true?
Yes.
Yeah.
And even with you, I've learned this with you.
Yeah.
Because one of the things with you is you are slower than me on the intellectual level. And we all have noticed that.
It's
And
very obvious.
I know. And so I have been realizing I just have to give people permission to go at their speed.
Mm-hmm.
It's my problem that I can't work at other people's speed. It's not their problem. And so I'm looking to become more responsive in that way. And also just to learn to accept that everything will get done when it needs to get done. I don't have to be worried about that. And that's a lot of the driving issue behind speeding up, is this idea that we're not going to get it all done. I found victim to that a lot, just because I think, oh man, I have so much to cover, but I'm realizing, no, I should stop and just do very little then. That's actually very helpful. Okay.
Thanks, Larry.
Yeah. Chris.
One of the parts that I'm learning about the breathing, one is I noticed initially that I have like a 5-second pause after my exhale before I naturally want to take another breath in. So I've just been, I made myself try it, continual breathing at first. That didn't work. So now I'm just kind of trying to narrow down that 5-second gap. And I'm on a Facebook page where people are reading this book and kind of looking at things out there. And somebody said, so the effort, maybe it was in the book, the effort actually goes into the in breath, and then the out breath is natural. And that's really been helpful because I was trying to manage both those. And so it's been more helpful to me to try to play with it that way at this point.
Beautiful.
It's a journey. I can tell it's a journey.
So I agree with you on that. And I went through a period of just working on that. And the other thing that was distracting a lot is they really pause it or reduce it by putting in a couple words in each breath. And it's helping you to synchronize that way as well. So that may be a helpful thing to incorporate as you go here, to go deeper with that process. Okay. So any other questions? So let me go back to just talking about what is a common ground. It's a way to have a conscious co-creative connection. And as we've all said in our group, it's us affirming who we are as a creative being first. And we've always talked about it as knowing your primary, your secondary, and your mental body. What we're going to be focusing on in this process is it's your virtues, your values, and your impulses. So if you look at it, the impulses are life energy, the values are light energy, and the virtues are love energy. And so we're going to be going through all three of those. And the reason we're going through those in a certain sequence is to help clear out our old associations that we've received from our parents. You know, things that we have gotten accustomed to or we've become habitualized to doing that tune us out. So we're not really showing up present in the moment. That really is what we're working against here. We're trying to find what is natural for you. And so we have 15 qualities that we're going to end up talking about that each person has that are unique to them, that they're affirming. And as they're breathing, they're affirming these qualities in themselves and letting that come to the surface. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I'm trying to allow you just to be present without any thought. I don't need you to be thinking about this long term. I want you to be accepting yourself long term. But the problem is we've taken on these imprints that diminish who we are, and we conform to those past patterns, which is not flowing for us. So the goal here, I want to say a couple more things here. The goal here is to be autonomous, and being autonomous means owning our own truth. And our truth isn't in a paradox compared to other truths. Other truths can complement our truth, can be different from our truth. There's no competition going on. There's just different perceptions. And remember, I've always said that the problem with our truth issues is that we're so compromised by time that we're diminishing our perspective of truth, either one-dimensionally or in a dualistic way, by having a defense. It's me versus you, or it's just me. Those are the variations of our truth. Now, I'm saying there's got to be a possibility of a higher truth, which includes at least three elements, like the intent, the content, and the context. That means we're allowing ourselves to be present in our truth and have it located in us. And we're also being present with understanding that it may not conform to others and it may not fit their idea. And so it's a discussion about how to get to maybe some kind of mutual truth. And it's not about changing their mind. It's about finding the common mutual truth that could arise in the situation. So that's why we're talking about a common ground. It's really simply to affirm ourselves so that when we speak and when we communicate about who we are, we're not in conflict. If we're in conflict, then we're not doing a common ground. If we're holding common ground, like right now, I'm holding a common ground for this communication process. And it gives everyone here permission to be themselves, and it invites them all to come in and feel connected in that place. Also, to feel that there's other levels of depth here if they're willing to tune into that. Okay. Questions? Anybody have any questions about that? Do people get the idea here that the common ground is a location outside of your own physical space that is independent? Everybody follows that? Okay. Okay, so let's go to the next slide then. So we're going to ask the question, what is a common ground? And I've just given you a brief summary. It is fairly nebulous from that description, but we're going to try to ground it in much more discrete ways. Sandy?
Elements of common ground, integrating our body, mind, and spirit. The three circles at right illustrate the three elements of interconnection, both personally and transpersonally. These elements drive our development and support change, growth, and striving in the world. Anytime we settle for solitary or polarized perspectives, we create an unstable environment, both for us and those we love. Relaxation, reorientation, and regeneration require us to be conscious of how we integrate our modalities with our boundaries of energy, time, and space. When we are able to be abundant with our energy, time, and space, and not define ourselves in terms of others, our autonomy, intimacy, and co-creativity naturally evolve.
And we don't have to work at this at a common ground. We just have to put more attention on how we're showing up and let ourselves move with the flow.
This capacity can only evolve when we develop our intent, content, and context to manifest beauty, truth, and goodness.
That's the core organizing principle of a common ground. This capacity can only evolve when we develop our intent. That is what our action is and how we can connect our action to the action around us in the universe. And then secondly, and it's more like a purpose statement from the bottom up. And then the content statement is, what do we know, or how can we respond to this incident? And so it's really about what problems are we engaged in? Who are we to engage in those problems? And everybody has a creative design, and therefore there are natural things that we show up engaging in the world, topics and things that are important to us. And so we have to fulfill that dream, and that's by engaging that content. Then there's the context part. The context part is how we hold the fullness of ourselves. We embrace all the, or maybe I should say, accept all the aspects of ourselves, sometimes even our conflicts or our tension in ourselves that have yet to be resolved. Now, every piece of tension in us is something that we're working on. And the question is, it's always in a process of refinement. And we want to just give it room to figure out how it works best for us. And the result of all common ground, I said earlier, is harmonious interaction. Well, that's usually described by beauty, truth, and goodness. Now, beauty, truth, and goodness isn't a goal. There's no goal to it. It is what's so from our inner nature. We're naturally beautiful. In fact, the more inner beauty we recognize from our creativity, the more we can step into beauty. And the more we accept ourselves in our truth and don't go defensive, the more our truth can be expansive and we can include others in our process. And the more that we are not competing with others or comparing ourselves with others based on where we think actually based on how important we are to them, that diminishes goodness. But what I want us to do is just to see the natural goodness come out of us from the fact that we're being in a state of more wholeness and presence with people. So that's the process here. That's the large picture. And if you look at the diagram there are other terms there that we use that describe how everything comes together. And it's very fascinating because the inner creative presence is the core issue that we're all going for. And when I first read Michael Brown's book, The Presence Process, I said, wow, this is a really terrific framework for stepping into ourselves. But what is the problem if we're not being ourselves fully? And what is the problem if we're not being able to mutually work with others as equally as we work with ourselves? So those are the two dimensions I'm trying to bring to the common neutral ground process. The other thing I also want to mention here is you'll notice that autonomous aliveness is the first major non-dualistic attraction that we need to have, and intimate vulnerability is the second one, and creative responsiveness is the third one. And then you can see that there are other elements in there that are experiential modalities and how they relate to each other as well. Okay, Sandy.
At the source of all this is our ability to honor and love our creative nature, so our curiosity, playfulness, and mutual learning occur. Using life, light, and love to expand our experiences with stillness, solitude, and silence.
Yeah, you're going to wonder where did that stillness, silence, and solitude come from? It's really interesting that when we are present in our intent, it's because we can go into a state of stillness and see it in relative to movement, and we're not trapped into doing conditioning. Or we can use solitude as a place of rebalancing our thought processes when we get, I want to say, caught up in proving ourselves. And silence is the best thing when we're overdoing our self-importance. We need to get in a place of silence and just listen to ourselves. That would be the three tools on a larger level that we could use.
Unifying modalities with life, light, and love to manifest beauty, truth, and goodness.
So that's the whole process there. Okay.
3 types of disconnection: minimizing life, light, and love. Without realizing it, our sense of disconnection is amplified when we deny life, connections with intent.
And by the way, that's also when we deny our own energy. That's another way of saying that. Okay.
Light, connections through time.
And that's when we are in a time compression phase from our phones, from all the ways that society is asking us to speed up to be more productive. That's directly disconnecting ourselves from our own truth. Okay.
And love, passionate feeling connections.
And what that is doing is, if we're looking to get love confirmed externally, it isn't radiant self-unifying love. It isn't our love of ourselves. It's needy, I want to say, codependent type of love, because it's always transactional. And there's no safety and security in that at all. So I'm asking you to consider radiant self-unifying love as the answer there.
We typically start to build connections through the attraction of beauty, appearance, particularly driving sexuality. This can evolve into intellectual stimulation and a desire to be acknowledged for our intelligence in the pursuit of truth. Some individuals connect through the image of goodness or the pursuit of personality love. In each, the disconnection to life, light, and love reduces our ability to be present. We need to build a better connection to ourselves and our modalities to connect creatively. The cost of self-denial is objectification, subjectification, and idealization, which produce isolation, separateness, and insulation, respectively.
Those are a lot of big words. So let me unpack that a little bit. So when we're in a state where we're not able to accept our creativity at the intent level, we tend to objectify other people by looking at them in terms of their appearance and evaluating them. And that distinguishes us from them because we're scoring ourselves on how well we look compared to how well they look. That's objectification. And that produces isolation. Now, the next one, subjectification, is when you're caught up in proving what you know and you want others to implement your truth. And so you're willing to push them to conform to you. And you're not willing to listen at all. And in that situation, no one's truth gets honored, and we have a tremendous amount of separativeness. And then finally, in the process of idealization, we end up idealizing ourselves or idealizing others, which creates an imbalance between either us or them. And in the imbalance, we try to rectify it by creating insulation. That means I won't let them hurt me. I'm going to protect myself and my feelings and emotions in a particular way. So I'm going to be more or less available so that they can't effectively damage me. And then so those whole types of disconnection are where we're disconnected from ourselves. Therefore, we're not being present. And when we're not being present, we're not learning that we're bigger and more creative and more capable than what we think. Okay, Cindy. Any questions with that?
Larry, I have a question.
Sure.
That last sentence is really powerful. And the cost of self-denial. So in the last couple months, I've been involved in this community outreach that is dealing with the homeless problem here in Asheville. And it's been very humbling and very eye-opening. And when I'm out and I'm and I see the homeless population, I immediately go into objectification, subjectification, and idealization all at once. And I can't figure out, it seems like it's easier or I can maneuver it better if I'm dealing with a business relationship or a friend or a family member. But this particular issue, I don't even know how to approach it. I don't even know how to approach a common neutral ground.
Right. So let me just say something. I'm not picking you out, Cindy. This is not directed at you, but it's easy to get in a situation where we feel we have to fix people or we have to help them out of their current problem. And it's not accepting them where they are in their problem. Like in the homeless population, probably their biggest issue is their own self-objectification. Notice what I just said there. They're objectifying themselves, finding themselves non-beautiful, not approachable, not acceptable, all that stuff. That creates isolation in them.
Yeah.
That isolation is their tenet of their belief, and they create a wall around themselves to prevent anybody from hurting them in that way.
Yeah.
And so when you're doing a common ground, you need to be able to accept that's their choice. You need to be able to accept that they're making that choice. Now, it doesn't mean you can't invite them to do something, because in that situation, what I would do is be as consistent as I possibly could and to acknowledge them and to value them. And over time, they see you, they keep tuning in and realizing you're not doing those judgment things. They might come out because people want to come out, but they just don't feel it's safe. And especially on the objectification and safety. On the subjectification, it's all about security. And on the idealization level, it's always about self-importance. So these are the judgments that people use to keep people isolated. And I'm trying to say to you, yes, those patterns are real, but we don't have to operate as if those are defining us. You know, they can be all about how it's defining them if and to the degree they're implementing that. But we are not trying to change that or fix that or do anything to that. In fact, and when we do that, it's only when we do that that they can come out and go beyond their own self-limits. And that's the trick, because we need to go beyond our self-limits. And our self-limits is not judging them for what they're judging themselves, for how they're judging themselves. And that's my wisdom to you about this, is not to fall in the trap of taking on their beliefs as if it meant that they were not less or they were less than you or something was wrong. Don't do that.
Okay.
Have it be open. Have it be whatever they need it to be. The more we do attachments, positions, and projections on them, the more they need their defenses.
Right. Yeah, that's what I'm seeing. That's definitely what I'm experiencing. Okay.
And so you just have to have the freedom not to do that for yourself, so that you can invite them to come out when they're ready.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Larry.
Yeah.
Stephen?
Thanks, Sandy. Larry, so in that paradigm, it's like they're going off the deep end, the gun's in the mouth, and we go, you're making your choices. And I understand that this is a very healthy place to not get embroiled. And I could see where, thank you for the description, we strengthen their defenses when we're saying, you got to fix yourself and you're not clean enough or you're going to die or something. I think if people close to us versus people that we're just doing like a service on a weekend, we just let them be. And
yes,
so
in a way, it's true that you're letting them be. I really want to acknowledge that part of it, but I also want it to be possible for us to love them. I also want it to be possible for us to bring our light to the situation, not to illuminate their issue, but to illuminate both of us, and also bring our life energy to the situation and share that appropriately, not to fix them, but to say, well, maybe I would like to contribute to you in this way. Would you mind if I did this? That is that's a creative self act. You know, we do things for our own reasons. It doesn't have to go, it's not about them. It's about us.
And with that, thank you, Larry. When I want to help someone, fix somebody, save somebody from getting hit by a bus, what is it? What I've known so far is it's like Irish Catholic guilt. You know, you got to give to everybody else, or Jewish guilt, or whatever other motivation.
So the guilts relate to this too. So objectification amplifies guilt. Subjectification amplifies shame, and idealization amplifies blame. So you see there's 3 levels of that: the guilt, the shame, and the blame, that are always the intermediaries of the judgments, you know?
That's helpful. Really good. Thanks.
if you're feeling these ways, then there's some part of you that is still participating in an old way. And usually it's because there's some part of us that's still judging ourselves.
Definitely.
So your work is to clear out your own judgments as much as possible.
I can smell or taste a great freedom right around the corner.
Yes.
I don't have, and it's not just like, okay, everybody's on their own. It's not that. I can still love and bring life and energy, but I'm not actually the person on point responsible. That's
no, no, we each have our own, I want to say, area of responsibility that has to do with our life contribution. And that's dealing with our expression and all the aspects of our compatibility factors that make us who we are. But that's a natural thing, and it's always an unfolding process. It is never, kind of penetrating, capture and hold kind of process. It's not about, I have to make my destiny happen. No, it's more like I'm going to be myself, so my destiny happens. It's an outgoing thing that's just naturally flowing rather than something that is judged or pushed. Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, Sandy.
Polarization in modalities minimizes life, light, and love. Internal disconnection reflects an acceptance of false personality distortions, objectification, subjectification, idealization. This means we mainly connect through imprinting, defenses, and pretenses.
So let me just talk about that for a moment. So it's easier for unconscious people, and I'm not saying unconscious in a judgmental way. I'm just saying people who have not yet activated who they are on a creative level. And it's easier for them to just say, hey, my parents told me I'm this way, and other people have confirmed I'm this way, so I should just behave in this imprinted framework because that's what people want from me. And believe me, it's ironic that people are irritated when you do your imprinting because you're not being authentic. But that's how people get how they accept themselves. And on the defensive level, I could really spend hours talking about this, but the issue here is that we get into patterns of where we think we have to counterbalance our creativity by doing something that's either more masculine, more feminine, or some balance of masculine and feminine, or a complete denial of masculine and feminine, and doing only roles. And it puts a cover on us. It puts a pattern on us so that when we talk to people, we have to engage them through agreement. How many people have noticed that people are not comfortable unless you initially agree with them? And if you don't have things to agree with them right away, they think that you're not interested in having any kind of relationship with them. And that's all just our conditioned defensive behavior. And then finally, there's this idea of, I've got to prove myself as valuable to other people. And if I don't prove this value, then I'm not worth being in a relationship with. And there are 4 pretenses, and they are expectations, romantic mythology, control, and seduction. They're all distractions and all false ways to connect. And they're usually a pattern of behavior where I'm trying to gain the other person's love and acceptance. And if you're trying to gain the love and acceptance of another person, it's a conditional expression of love, because you don't need others to agree with your love. If you're in a radiant self-unifying love, a radiant self-unifying love, it's just you're doing it from the abundance of your heart because you are drawn to do it, and you're not doing it for any gain on their part. You're doing it because you want to contribute in that way. That's a whole different type of love than looking for others to confirm some aspect of who we are. That's what creates all the codependent relationships, is that type of approach. So let me just say all this in a summary. These are all forms of disconnection that keep us from just showing up in our being, that keep us from just flowing into opportunities and learning and growing with people, and having harmonious relationships. And what we want is less effort and more creative flow. And that's why at the base of this, doing breathing is a process that helps people to regenerate themselves energetically, so they get the energy moving, so that then they clear all the debris out of the way, so their personalities can function without a lot of I want to say hubris and isolation, insulation, and separation. Okay, Jenny.
Amplifying possession, control, and the need to be superior.
Yeah, that's the outcomes that we have for disconnection. Okay.
3 types of connection: creative impulses, values, and virtues.
So I just said all the downsides. If we're identified with all those downsides, we have a hard time connecting to people as a creative, in our creative nature. But if we're honoring who we are creatively, we don't have that problem. And so it's incredibly powerful if we're just able to show up. Okay, Sandy.
Appreciating our creative impulses connects us to our intent and life energy. We need to focus on our instinctive responses rather than let our parents or family guilt us into being what they expect. There are 6 qualities, 3 reflecting our safety needs, and 3 reflecting what brings out our aliveness. Acknowledge our 6 values: 3 outer, which help us with security and success, and 3 internal, which support us in autonomously building a code of conduct.
So let me just go back here. You know, there is some really interesting thing I found out with impulses and with expectations. There is ways that there is a natural base that we choose for ourselves about how we show up on an instinctive level, that is to blend in with our families. And we've had an opportunity to, I would say, design that into our system. Now there's also a way that activates us to go beyond that. So we have three creative impulses, and we have 3 expectations. That's the first level on the instinctive level. The values are on the second level. The values are, we have 3 outer values, which relate to our secondary expression, and we have 3 inner values, which are the anchors for us to be doing our primary expression. And so there are 6 total on this level. So if you have 6 on the instinctive level, 6 on the intellectual level, then we go to our intuitive level and we say there are 3 that integrate the whole thing that have to do with our primary expression. But the primary expression can't really do it if it doesn't have a way of linking to the instinctive and the intellectual. It needs to have that way. So that's why there's 5 levels of 3 energies, which makes 15 qualities. So the reason why I'm bringing this all up now is that I've been practicing being with our energies with a certain perspective and a certain understanding of ourselves. And all of a sudden it clears away the debris so that what we've been carrying around with us can be put aside. So how we've held ourselves in the past as being part of our defenses and our imprinting and our idealization, they can all that stuff can be let go of. It doesn't have to dominate us in any way. Okay, Sandy.
Larry, Karen has a question.
Yes.
I have a question about imprinting. Are there certain areas of life where we show up less imprinted than other areas? And would it make sense to develop the areas of strength in that way?
That's a very interesting question, Karen. I will say to you that there's there are almost every situation, there is a positive way to use an imprint as a preference. What I mean by that, it has to be at choice, but and it does indicate that you have a desire or interest in doing activities in that area because you've adopted that from your parents, and you took on, being born to any parents, you took on certain life lessons from your parents. And so the question really is, I don't want that picture of them to smother you. But if we can put them to a side place and we can say, oh, these are preferences we can use, and we can bring out the core qualities that make us who we are, and we're not repressing those, then the preferences are not going to be in the way. They're just going to be choices or additions to the process. So I would agree with you that we've spent a lot of years learning about pretenses. I'm sorry, about imprinting. And I would also say to you that we also have to recognize that a lot of times the way we do imprinting gets us in trouble with people because they get bored whenever we do a pretense. If you're around people who are repeating themselves a lot and doing the same thing but not getting the full result, then you start to question whether or not their real commitment is to the result or to doing some kind of personal programming. And usually it's imprinting that they're doing in that moment. If you start seeing them have choice, in other words, they're making it a preference and they're not doing it to get seen, then all of a sudden it changes the nature of it and it becomes more like a learned quality and not like a fixed pattern of behavior that has no responsiveness, and it isolates people. That's the problem, is most of the imprinting just isolates people.
Okay, thank you. Makes a lot of sense.
Okay. Sandy?
Finally, 3 virtues are necessary for a sustainable, generative, and fulfilling authentic life expression. All our long-term contributions are built on our experiences, which are best shared through a common neutral ground. These 15 qualities are the product of understanding our 3 creative expressions, primary, secondary, and mental body. We identify these in class.
Great. So I can do it right now. Karen, do you want me to use you as a model here? Would you mind?
No.
This is just a suggestion. You don't have to believe anything I say. And in fact, it might be better for you not to believe it. So the point is when you look at Karen, what do you notice about Karen? You notice that her real energy is her visionary on the primary. She wants to be a contributor in a way of giving emotional healing to people and to bring people's life energy into flow with some larger vision. And
she's an inventor on the primary.
Karen?
Karen?
This is Karen from California.
Okay, good. Okay, great. Then I'm sorry. I'm going off on a tangent here. Then really what I was really, I guess I have to switch it up and say that the imprinting, I was going to use you as imprinting here. Yeah. So your imprinting here is that you have visionary on the primary, and you have looks like investigator on the secondary, and you have some inventor on the third probably. And so what I'm really getting at here is those are like ways you've been distorted in your way of operating. Does that make sense? In other words, you grew up thinking you couldn't be an inventor because you had to be a visionary. And you grew up thinking that you couldn't be, we have you as a investigator, It's interesting because I could see that you have imprinting on top of that one, but the interesting thing is it makes it harder for you to access your own knowing and trust your own knowing. And then because when you have imprinting on top of the natural energy, you keep distorting. Well, is this what my parents told me, or is this what I'm telling me? And you don't know which is which. And then the third level is you've got your. It's interesting because you have inventor imprinting on the mental body, which is your visionary. So you have an inversion between both the primary and the mental body. And that creates confusion on that level alone. So when you start actually building, like I can build a tree of 15 qualities. And what I want you to do in that situation is start distinguishing where the distortions are that are preferences versus what are the things that are the primary. And that seems to be the biggest challenge in your life, is not knowing where to focus your attention, or not knowing how to really evolve into something that you love.
And the imprinting on top of the scholar, I think I've overdone that, because it's a comfort zone, because the imprinting gets combined with my natural energy. But I also feel that that's not the artist, and that's not the creativity, which is kind of suppressed, as you say.
Yeah. Okay. But I just want to acknowledge here that we're going to go back into, we have another document that we want to make available to people in this class. And when you look at that document, that will help you clarify what is the priority for you.
Okay.
What is the focus? And that's what's healthy in this process is questioning if it's not working for you to be a certain way, and you're attracting people that are more confused. Because see, what happens is when you're less accepting of who you are, you attract people that are confused too. And then that creates a lot of distortions. Okay, let's go to Ty. Ty had his hand up for a while. Thank you for caring for that.
Sure, thank you.
I was just wondering if this is a new way of looking at it with the qualities, like comparing to the pyramid structure.
Yes, exactly. I'm going to be expanding the pyramid structure, which I have actually already, and I'm going deeper on that than I've ever gone before, and I'm making it so that people can see the choices in it reflect certain types of patterning from their parents, so that they can release themselves from doing the patterns to benefit their parents, instead do them for themselves, because that's one of the major issues.
So we're expanding. Before we were just looking at the three impulses that reflect our aliveness. Now we're adding the safety part.
Yes, we're looking at the whole thing, and we had it in the pyramid process there, but we've expanded that process so that everybody can see all the elements in the appropriate perspective. That's my new approach.
So Ty, if you'll recall from the pyramid process, there are three impulses that are related to your mental body expression, and there are three impulses related to the mental body of your primary expression. And that part is still the same. Larry's just developing them more.
Right.
Yes. The reason is the deeper you go on that, the more you realize that there's different motivations on these levels, and there's different types of obstacles, and we want to be focusing on the right level and where the obstacle is, so we can clear it out. Okay, cool. Sandy?
All of our long-term contributions are built on our experiences, which are best shared through a common neutral ground. These 15 qualities are the product of understanding our three creative expressions, primary, secondary, and mental body. We identify these in class. Our creative expression defines our life purpose. Our 15 qualities attract what we fear or desire and permit us to choose and customize our path.
So there is aspects of ourselves that are in a state of denial, which are minimizing our ability to freely connect with other people. That's the problem. And so people don't know who we are. We don't know who we are. So we just have closed down areas and less fluidity and less flexibility. And we want to open all those doorways up. Okay.
We are vibrationally tuned into a particular contribution.
Yep.
The more we accept our impulses, values, and virtues, the more we move heroically to support the universe.
Why? Because we start to understand ourselves as a contribution, and the universe wants us to contribute and work with the universe in moving forward. And when we start showing up in a bigger way, all the powers of our attractions come into play, and we start bringing the right people into our life. And that leads to the next statement there is alignment attracts the best people. Okay. So for the people that have been in this work for quite some time, this won't be that new, because this is what we call our experiential modalities. And the things I want to really point out here is that on the sensations level, we're looking at states that reflect how we feel in our body. So tense, warm, cool, tight, relaxed. Those are all states of being in the body. Feelings are more like what the reflections of those sensations mean to us. So it's expansive, glad, confused, numb. There are things about the sensations that put us in states of our feelings that we're either available or we're not. So the question really is to unify both of those two so that we're in a state of intent and we can be in our body and move forward. Now, the bottom two levels, emotions and thoughts, what's different between feelings and emotions is that emotions are in time, just like thoughts are in time. So when we actually go into grief or any kind of event that's a long-term feeling, it's really an emotion. And because of that, it gets anchored in time and it keeps reoccurring in a certain way. And examples are anger, cohesiveness, anger, sadness, grief, uplifted, enthusiastic, suspicious. Those are all things that we're gathering information about in the world, and we have a confirmation bias that keeps giving us the same response and the same picture of what's going on around us. And then those are the anchors for what our thoughts are telling us we can do or how we can respond. And so they have to do with what we're trying to solve or how we're trying to solve certain issues. And that's all about content or thinking. And then the middle two, feelings and emotions, are where we get our creative spirit. And we abbreviate it to feeling because feeling's in the moment more. And we say that context is related more to the feeling because it's more about a spatial experience of ourselves as a whole, both our body and our mind. Okay, so if you think about it, all these are how we validate what our experience is and how it's going for us at this moment. And we have a huge ability to respond to these, and by responding to them in a balanced way, we can process through the stuff here rather than becoming overdone or underdone or just tightly bound so that nothing moves forward. Because if we're stuck in these areas and we're not processing, we can't see the whole picture. In fact, we get used to being very lopsided in our views of the world, and we can't let certain truths in or can't let certain views in, or we can't let certain body experiences in, and then we get sick. We are distorted in a variety of ways. Has everybody kind of followed that so far? Okay. So I think right now we have to take a little break. We're going to take a little break. And we'll take a 7-minute break, and that'll give you a chance to move around and recover your balance yourself. And me too. Hello, Elizabeth. Okay, we're back now. And some people have asked me, what are we talking about that's different than what we've said before about common ground? And this summarizes it right here. We're talking about energy, time, and space as the cornerstones of having a balanced CNG. Because if you don't have these three elements, you'll be out of balance with other people is the real issue. Okay. Sandy?
Principles of common neutral ground. Establishing our relationship boundaries. Our body focus or energetic intent needs to be creatively differentiated so we do not just unconsciously merge with others.
That means we need to know our own truth as separate from other people. You know, it doesn't mean that we have to agree with every aspect of what they're saying, or we disagree with it. There's usually overlap, but we have to know our own part in what we're saying. If we don't know our own part, we get confused and we start operating as if we're in conflict very quickly.
This form of instinctive entanglement can evolve into intellectual polarization and/or idealized enmeshment. Autonomy is based on declaring our own beauty, truth, and goodness, which can be measured by our intent, content, and context awareness. We need to fully define and accept ourselves before we can consider another's truth as our own. We do this by honoring our 16-inch energetic field around our body so no one can manipulate us. Secondly, we need to establish a separate space for our relationship connections outside of our personal space to regain our choices about timing. Third, we need to know how to create abundant energy, time, and space to be present when connecting to others in a common neutral ground.
So when we're connecting right now, there are some people that are able to be there on physical levels, some people are able to be there on mental levels, some people are able to be there on social levels. And all this relates to how they're managing their energy, time, and space, and how much bandwidth they have on each layer there. So I don't think I've ever talked about it this way before, because it was there, but I didn't really realize it until last year that it was one of the major issues. Okay, anybody have a question? Okay.
Separating ourselves from codependent reflections and attachments through creative differentiation. Establishing autonomous energetic experiences by accepting our integrity. Owning our energy, time, and space so we can share it appropriately. We manifest a personality boundary by creating a common neutral ground, then distinguish our differences and similarities in the common neutral ground. Why this is important is that who we are is our is our creativity and not our personality structure, which is imprinting, defenses, and pretenses.
So we need to connect, and this is the big issue here. Okay, moving ahead here.
Deirdre has a question, Larry.
Deirdre? I thought she was just coming on.
Oh, just coming in. Okay, sorry.
Okay. So this is the large picture here of how we can look at common ground as an energetic experience. And also the other useful thing about this is it really shows how motives, attractions, skills show up with creative expression. And so obviously there's a feminine side, there's a masculine side, and there's a combined side here. And like I said in the beginning, if we have no energy, we have no intent, And without intent, we have no ability to do conscious participation and put ourselves into a place of being able to show up. Without content, we have no sense of timing or balance in our timing. And so consequently, we can't do mutual accomplishment. If we have an issue with our relationship space, that means we're preoccupied by our way of relating to another person, or we're preoccupied by their way of doing it, then there's conflicts between the two. And what that means is we can't really do universal dominion. Universal dominion is a capacity just to hold a common space and let the common space be neutral as much as possible. And if it's not neutral, it'll be manipulated, and that won't be very much fun. And then the next level up, there's the attractions, and you can see there's autonomous aliveness, there's intimate vulnerability and creative responsiveness. And all this has to do with why are we together? What is it about us that is resonating? Where do we want to show up, and what way do we want to show up? If you have these levels of attraction, it means that there are various aspects of you that could, if you're holding space with each other, that could be used as building blocks for putting together a larger conscious creative expression, maybe a creative project. The autonomous aliveness is what initially establishes our own field, and it also helps us to just accept our truth independently of other people. And then when we are connecting in the common ground, we're connecting with vulnerability because we're not trying to prove anything. We're not trying to be what others want us to be. We're just actually showing up, and we're just hang out there. And that is the best way to affirm our goodness, not through judging people, how they treat us, or how much they're taking care of us. I'm not saying those aren't important issues, but I'm just saying those are superficial aspects compared to other things. If you look at the aspects there, the first level on the autonomous aliveness, the underlying issue is synthesis is what the goal is. And the second level there, it's about heart chalice, building up a reservoir of ways we love ourselves and we affirm ourselves so that we have a lot to contribute. And the third level is, can we work together with a state of right purpose and economy? And so that we're doing things that make sense and that serve other people, as well as ourselves. And then finally, we move up to the skills level, and we have on the masculine level, we have the pregnant duration. That means using time shifting. And the time shifting is saying, I'm going to focus on the moment. I'm going to put everything there. I'll accumulate insight and information as I go along. And when I feel it's appropriate, I'll bring it up, talk about it, and we'll make it part of the process or not. And so it's about focusing ourselves in the moment, in time. It's a concentration process. And it's also builds our self-esteem because we then know kind of what's ours and what we can do next. And we are pushing ourselves to move ahead, but but not driving ourselves to overdo. And then the spacious presence is the feminine side, and that's about working with people in a flowing way and not judging them at all. And that takes us affirming that they can be however they want to be. And it's not to say that you won't have a different perception of them than they have of themselves. That's okay. But you don't have to make that an issue with them. It's just a way that you're connecting. You see them in a different way than they see themselves. You're connecting them in the way that works for you. They're connecting to you in the way it works for them, and it's no big deal. And it's cooperative in that larger framework. So that produces more contemplation and more self-respect of yourself and other people. And that's a driving issue there. And then finally, on the top level, you can see it's creative impulses for the feminine, and that leads to transmutation and stillness and seeding of possibilities. and it's creating nothing, creating something from nothing. And then on the other side, it's the creative values, and that's a becoming issue. It's in time, but it's in the moment. It's about transformation of ourselves over time. So we build a code of conduct that serves us. It's not about other people, it's just serving us. And we do that internally by calibrating to other people and who they are and what they're about. We're always learning. Now, one thing I mentioned to you recently was that there's a lot of situations where we don't know. We might think right now we have a handle on who a person is, but over time they're changing. And we have to be alert to the fact that we have to reassess them periodically to kind of know where we are with them and how they are with themselves. And if we're not doing that recalibration that way, then we're not in the moment with them. And we have to, truth is only in the moment. So we want to really be in that framework there as much as possible. And then finally, the creative virtues are all about transfiguration, about inner silence, and about an appreciation of what we're doing. Now, one of the big values of a common ground is we put energy toward things we appreciate, and they come, and then they are attracted to us, and then we build on that experience. So we're always building future positive ways of seeing each other and interacting. Wow. Stephen.
Yes, thank you. A moment ago, you said that we can see others differently than they see themselves.
Yep.
It's true also vice versa, like other people can see me differently. And is it idealization that driving this caring what other people think of me?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Your idealization of yourself is probably in the way there. So what we want to do is heal both sides. And we want to first let go of that. We don't have to care about what they think about us, and we don't have to care about their interpretation of us. Their interpretation is just their interpretation, and it's always coming from them. And so it's not our business. I just want to say it's not our business. It's ironic that a lot of people do a lot of behavior because they want to be adored by other people, or they want to be valued by other people, and they're doing things to please them so that, they'll get a better, I want to say, score in life for serving others. Now, I don't really see that as service. I see that as caretaking in a way. So it's not that, it's a lot of work, and it's not that effective. So I say it's all about how we interpret ourselves and accepting that as much as possible. And there are things that you would say about, I have weaknesses or I have strengths, and that's okay to have weaknesses and strengths and have both sides. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Karen.
Could you say that in a relationship with a person with a higher level of consciousness, then the other person is going to be more aware of the other person and the changes? Then
It could be, and it's more likely that to be the case by far, but it isn't always necessarily that way, because there could be a blind side in anyone, and that blind side just means that there's an area where they can't see themselves and other people see them better.
okay, thank you. Thanks.
Okay. Cool. Anybody else? Yes.
I'm very taken by the word, the seeding, like up in the feminine top quarter.
Yes.
I was wondering, like, if someone's all feminine energy, like they acknowledge they're in their feminine, maybe they even have a feminine defense, like what could pull them out of just being actually really operating from the being of themselves?
Well, what mostly does is when they have to conform to other people's time-based framework. So any kind of drivenness in the masculine side or even them having to conform to the masculine side is a distortion for them. So if you have all feminine energy, your job is mainly seeding possibilities. And a lot of times those possibilities have long-term paybacks, not short-term paybacks. And so you have to be more willing to let things show up and trust the process more. Now, for the, when the masculine is in play, they're learning over time, gradually, to trust the in the moment process by being in a state of greater unity with themselves. Now, one of the problems here is that they don't particularly, if they're still overly connected to the, trying to control anything, then they're going to be adversarial to the person in the feminine energy. Why? Because they can't put their hands on what is not happening. They want to know what is happening all the time so they can respond to it. And if they can't figure that out, they feel like the other person's not available to them or not participating, which is not fair. It's just a difference. We have to acknowledge that difference. Now, in your case with Hege, you both have more feminine energy that you can put together, and you're both seeding projects. You're a little bit more in the masculine side, trying to get timing to work toward a goal. And but on the other hand here, if you were trusting in her process and her timing, and you were talking to her about the timing, it would invite her to be more engaged in the process and actually do more seeding. And the more the seeding occurs, the more natural things would come forth. And then you start seeing, wow, she's really a major contributor. And even though it's not in time, it's very potent. That would be helpful.
It seems like my experience working with other artisans, like the rubber hits the road with how much we can, if we can work together. It kind of depends on if we can hold time in a way that can work for everybody.
Yes, I would agree that is one of the major dilemmas, because timing is, there's a huge amount of conformance and rebellion using time for inventors. So what I mean by that is, a lot of times inventors are not given time to be creative in their own form. So what do? They learn to push themselves in a variety of ways, and that inhibits their ability to let things emerge, to be supported by the universe. And they're just not allowing that to flow. So there's the issue. And of course, a lot of them get into rebellion because they don't want to do what other people are telling them to do. And that just creates more problems. Yes, Katie.
So at the top level, stillness, silence, and solitude, for some reason, in my own experience, they don't feel so connected specifically to those different areas. Like it feels more like there's movement.
Yes, I agree. I would say that they're more about the process, but they're not necessarily about the feminine. Do you get my point about that? I'll say it to you another way.
The beingness of them. It's
yes.
So when we're working towards that, it's helpful to have them as anchors, as a structure. But then once we're in it, it's just a state of beingness, and there's no distinction.
Yeah. When I was doing this design this way, I could have started out by putting stillness in the motives level, and I could have put solitude in the attractions level, and I could have put silence in the skills level. So I could be going across rather than up and down. So when there is that type of diversity of usefulness, and by the way, a lot of our designs in higher alignment are cross-functional. They have two or more ways to go, sometimes 3 ways, actually. But the reason why I put that way is just to make it somewhat clear in terms of developmentally. where we're going.
Right. So it's that it's
And,
use
and
the
so people that are
gender
more
as-
comfortable with the feminine side, they'll use the feminine approach. People as more focused on the masculine side, we use the time and approach, or use the mental approach. That's all that really says.
Got it. Thank you.
Cool. Sandy, do you want to read this?
Sure. Common neutral ground healing, 12 qualities that heal and shift our way of connecting. When we show up in a relationship, what connects us is our creative impulses, values, and virtues. The motivation of our connection is not attention, but an openness to explore, a willingness to learn, and the ability to participate without reacting. What makes the relationship work best is conscious attractions that are embodied and shared between partners. How we connect is through skills and an abundance of energy, time, and space, reflecting love, esteem, and respect. What we seek is to be seen for our contribution and cherished for our ability to see and love others. Communion commences when we are able to be present and hold a common neutral ground space over time. This is fluid and flowing.
Cool. Okay, so we've already kind of said what the diagram is here, so I think we can skip this, but I just want to say that creative presence is a process of us learning to be more responsive over time. Now, responsive means that we can engage others and be present with them without changing their intent and meet them where they are without trying to impose our will upon them. That's really what it comes down to. I will say down here, clarifying skills of autonomy, which is appropriateness, intimacy, which promotes diversity, and co-creativity, which produces reverence and gratitude. Those are all indications of that you're doing more common ground when you have that experience. Okay. So I'm gonna play with this a little bit more here and just ask you guys to do some process with me. So can you take a couple of deep breaths in yourself and just tune into your own internal energy and just ask yourself, how well do you have a way of directing this energy? And just notice right now, how integrated are you with your purpose? Some people might call it an authentic life expression. And remember to breathe. And just notice if, when you do breathe, it can send pulses of energy to your mind. And then those pulses can come down into the heart. And you can just imagine synchronizing yourself a little bit. Just notice that, are you comfortable with the amount of energy that you're engaging others or engaging yourself within the environment you're in right now? Are the connections you have with the people in the common ground, are they supportive? Just notice how unobtrusive they are on you, and they're trying to show up at least as present as possible. Okay. So I'm going to ask you now just to think about time. Do you have enough time for everything you need to do? Just notice if your engagement of time is one that makes you analytical and separate. And perhaps it can be a different way. Perhaps you can have a connection with someone if you could just be in this moment, and it wouldn't be challenging or energetically draining. And if you were able to hold space for yourself, would it be a spaciousness in time, or would it be a spaciousness in energy, or would it be just more ability to navigate with other people? Just notice where you go. And just consider yourself free right now of any need to provide any energy, time, or space to others. And that you have complete choice. That you don't have to impose on people's space or define their space to make you feel better. Neither do you need to define your own space in a way that they have to conform to you. Instead, just imagine there would be a free-flowing expression of spaciousness with each person, where they can be responsive as they are. And just start to imagine what it would be like if we were able to maintain this level of energy, time, and space as a whole way of being, so that we could respect ourselves and respect others equally. Or we could esteem others and esteem ourselves equally. Or we can just go to the heart of the matter and share our sense of radiant self-unifying love despite what anyone's doing with us. And if that were true, could we receive radiant self-unifying love from our partners in this environment we're talking about? Because ultimately, we want to have relationships that have mutual respect, mutual esteem, and radiant self-unifying love. Okay. So I'm going to ask you now to kind of come out of that inner space I was just evoking and how you were responding to various, movement, to a sense of direction about how you are interacting with people. And just notice how expansive that was. Or how would you describe it in different ways? Anybody have anything to share?
I'll say something.
Sure, Karen.
It was hard for me because I'm so used to sending my energy out. It's actually hard to gather it in.
Okay, that's a great insight, Karen. If you're sending your energy out, it probably because you've been taught to perform, and you've been taught that you don't deserve to have your own space, your own energy, your own time.
That's right.
And so I would really encourage you to do some breathing exercises with yourself and just enjoy unpacking that. What would be a way your energy could flow that would serve you? Because it seems like you didn't give yourself opportunities for that when you were younger. And there's probably some distractions around you at that time to make it hard to feel safe in that situation.
Yeah, it does feel like a pattern. Thank you. That's good advice.
Yeah. And the other thing I would like to say is if you're focusing on your space and your space is solid, then being with other people is much easier. But if you're putting all your attention out to other people, then you're not taking care of yourself, they're likely projecting into your space what they fear, and then they're hooking you in some way, and they get you to perform for them. And that sucks, because then you're just feeling like you have to do what they want.
Yeah, I just had that happen at work a lot, and I caught that that whole patterning, and I saw the historical aspect of it, and it was kind of too late, but it's good to hear it in your words, because it's more of a spiritual bent on it. So
yeah, it's just, by the way, it's great that you're owning that and being with that, because that's 2/3 of the way to healing it. You have to have a clear idea of what you would like to have, and so that you can focus on that. And remember, I said to you, whatever you appreciate and that you bring into yourself, and it starts from you, it really magnifies your ability to attract it to you.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Well, I really appreciated that we slowed down, and that instead of reading through the slides, you did that in an experiential way, because I'm noticing more and more how I go on if we're talking about, content and information, and I'm yearning to learn how to do this more experientially. And, just like Karen, it's easier for me to be externally oriented. So I just appreciated that shift in helping me experience what we were talking about. Yes.
Yeah, I think that there's so much we can talk about that we get caught up in it.
Right.
And it'd be really nice to go beyond just trying to pattern it and understand what the possible reactions are and why they're happening, to just being.
Right.
To just being, no need to figure it out. Just be with it, see how it goes, where it goes, how it can show up.
And that's so different than how our culture does it and, how we've done it sometimes in higher alignment. And so, it's one hope I have for the class is that I could start to repattern that in myself so I could do it for myself regardless of what's going on. But I also appreciate kind of acknowledging it as a group.
Right. Good. Thanks. Anybody else?
I noticed there's a real similarity to things like Tai Chi or mindful practices that are more physically oriented.
Yes, I agree with you there 100%. I think Tai Chi is really a very beautiful form. Tom uses a lot of Tai Chi in his whole history. He's been taught through Tai Chi, and that is it's not just a breathing, but it's a movement process that unpacks a lot of our processing issues. Hi, did you have something?
Yeah, I was just like an experience in this like really clicked for me. Like it's not that clear, like my energy and other people's energies. And I just realized like this visualization process is like practicing this on my own could be a safe way to be able to start to separate out like my experience from other people's experience.
Yes, it is not just a way of doing that. It's a way of not triggering other people. So when you're speaking on a, kind of a merged way, they're reacting to you possibly not because of, there's parts they disagree with, but the way you're putting it together isn't honoring what they wanted to say or isn't honoring how they see it. And so you're trying to be helpful by putting it all together, but that doesn't mean they can receive it that way, Cool. So just to let you know, this diagram, it really shows you that by growing our self-respect, our esteem, and our ability to love, you get to the higher levels of common neutral ground, and that's co-creative embodiment. Otherwise, you're mainly doing things for an outer goal, and then it comes back to haunt you because you're still attached to the way certain things are. And so you're just partially free, if you get my meaning. Okay. So I'm going to do a little guided common ground process now where I'm going to take you into a more formalized common neutral ground process so that you can just get an experience of it and see where it takes you and how you would have your own experience here. Okay. And so we're going to talk about aligned impulses or aliveness, values or wisdom, and virtues, which equate to awareness. So everybody can turn off their screens and just get settled in their location for a few minutes. And I'm just going to talk about what occurs in a common neutral ground so you can consider this. So you can take a few deep breaths in and out. And just tune into your creative energy. Use your heart, mind, and or body energy to anchor your own experience of your virtues, values, and creative impulses. However you imagine it to be, bring it into existence. Just clear your personal space so that you're fully present in yourself first. Relax your body, mind, and heart as you imagine a tendril of energy emerging from your own heart to create a separate CNG bubble. Just imagine this bubble floating out in front of you of a distance at least 16 to 18 inches. And just fill it up with your creative expression. Just imagine things you love to do or contribute and put them in that space. When you have created this space, investigate your sense of wholeness. The quality of timeliness. And the abundance of your own energy anchoring everything. Just take a moment to explore your creative presence, particularly how you have contributed to and loved others. Recognize how much you have invested in your own respect, esteem, and ability to do radiant self-unifying love. And then notice how much you respect, esteem, and appreciate the people in your life. How much balance is there between where you are and where they are? I'm going to invite you to talk about this experience to yourself in the CNG space. That means you're a part of yourself is in the CNG space, and a part of yourself is just around your energetic body. And if you talk to yourself in the CNG space, just notice how it radiates back into your heart, body, and mind. And how are you feeling right now with your own experience of common ground? Maybe you want to bring in some motives or values or virtues. What we want to do is to release any attachments to others' associations, beliefs, or ideals that confuse your creative integration. Instead, imagine using your autonomous aliveness to affirm your nature, so you do not conform in your space to others in any way. This means avoiding reactivity by expressing only your own truth and experience. And just recognize you do not need attention, agreement, or acceptance to be your authentic creative self. In your personal space, you can recognize your creativity and not mix it up with others unless you choose to do so. When we are simultaneously connected to our inner autonomy, where we know our experience, it is easier to see how our experience can contribute to others in the CNG. Being able to be autonomous in our space and intimate in the CNG relationship space allows us to choose how to express our creativity on a mutual level. To accomplish this, we need to minimize our patterns of false identity, such as parental imprinting, our desire to protect our need to be right through defensive identities, or project our uncomfortable experiences on our partners, blaming them for not idealizing or seeing the best in us. We need to let them see what they see in us. Just like we learn to see ourselves better over time. What we want is to be human by experiencing our beauty, truth, and goodness. If we focus on the moment in this present time and honor our creative gifts, we discover our answers within us. We can resolve our internal creative conflicts and learn how to be transpersonal and transparent in our personality interactions. This place of creative presence invites us to affirm our authentic life expression and make contributions that are fulfilling. Just imagine how the joy of expressing ourselves would transcend the limitations of our personality stickiness. Splitting our attention between our creative self and others in the common ground is a gift when we know how to acknowledge and see each other. Affirming our creative impulses, values, and virtues is the first major step in appreciating others. What we see in others is always a partial reflection of what we can see in ourselves. Being creatively responsive empowers us to go beyond our personal space and discover the magic of co-creativity. All this takes is realizing that we are all unique mirrors of each other, reflecting both different similarities and differences. By consciously creating a CNG, things become more visible. So now I'm going to ask you to come back to the group. Slowly stretch your arms and legs. And then open your eyes when you're ready. Bring yourself to full alertness, where your natural aliveness, wisdom, and awareness sparkle. And as you come into an energetic connection with yourself, rebalance your attention and direct some energy to the group CNG. And you can turn on your screens when you're ready. Any ideas or thoughts about going through that inner visualization? Okay,
When you're talking, oh,
good.
when you're talking about doing, this is always confusing to me, putting myself in the common neutral ground, in the bubble in the common neutral ground. It feels to me like that's a more whole version of me than this embodied part of me. Is that how you're seeing it, or how does that?
Well, it could be, because here's the thing. When we have a lot of anchors, I would say, around our personality, in our personal space, because that's where we anchor them. So things like imprinting, conditioning, defenses, idealizations, things like that. Then what happens is we feel that experience sometimes less than when we just put our creativity in the common ground. But the common ground is meant to be more free and less structured, and we don't have to put anything in the common ground that we don't want to either. So we can share whatever is appropriate for us to share there. And some people might share their best self in that way, rather than share, the challenges they have easily. And then when that happens and that comes up in the common ground, they end up doing a personal mea culpa, and apologize for, not showing up or pulling back or doing something to withdraw in that situation, because it's just a reaction. Sometimes when we're not seeing everything, then what is being controlled is what we've denied. And so we're identified by the denial. So when that issue gets triggered, we just go back to the place where we're stuck, which a lot of times is in the body or in the mind or in the heart even. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, thanks.
Anybody else have a question? You can start seeing how we're deconstructing our experiences so they're not preset. We're not jumping through experiences, assuming, having a lot of assumptions when we're doing common ground. In fact, if you're doing that, you're not really being present with the other person. It's just you're anchoring the past in the situation. Okay. So we'll just complete the process here. We have a class coming up, and it's inner and outer presence with CNG. And as I've been saying, it is a comprehensive process, and there are 3 sections to it. And we're just doing the first section right now, and it involves these 6 classes. And it's about initially just affirming our creative nature. That's the first thing. The second thing is about releasing ourselves from our personality nature. And the third thing is about finding a way to balance our perception of ourselves with others people's perceptions of themselves so that we can do co-creative interactions. So there's a 1, 2, 3 process here. And just to let you know, we have a briefing document that we're in process getting out right now. We haven't yet completed it, but there's some links in here that go to a place that we're working on right now, but it'll be a few days before we get it up there. So don't go in and enter your name and email and expect something to happen right away. We'll actually let you know. But moving ahead here, as you can see, the first discussion is a 4-hour class, and there's 3 processes in it that deal with common neutral ground principles 2 weeks from today. And then there's 2 classes on Tuesday nights that are just 2 hours long that we've already given you to look at, so that you can then be prepared to come in there and just talk about what the challenges are with your processes. And then you can spend a little bit of time during Christmas break doing that if you like. And we're going to come back in the beginning of January and do another one of the Tuesday nights and another one of the Tuesday nights in the 16th of January. And then we're doing a completion process on the 20th of January. And so you can see kind of how this lays out and everything. Okay. And I just want to let you know, pretty much anybody that has an intention of having any desire to be in relationship or any desire to work more consciously with people can benefit from a common ground process.
Well, and anybody wanting to minimize conflict in their lives.
Yes.
In any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, so there are a lot of benefits that we have from doing this as well. It's a very common tool. We use it everywhere in our life, and particularly people learn that the areas that are the most difficult for them to be in are the ones they need it the most in. So an example is some people have difficulties with their families. That's when a common neutral ground could be the most powerful. Why? Because you're shifting the way they're seeing you and you're seeing them, and so that they start finding you have changed. Now, unfortunately, that may produce a short-term reaction, but ultimately when they realize that you're not trying to buttonhole them in any way or make them something different than they are, they'll appreciate it more and they'll give you more room to be yourself. So that's really the major benefit that I would say about the process. And the other thing is really, I want to say that we have a different way of talking about all the 15 qualities of who we are. And when you get that document that has the presentation, you can listen to it on SoundCloud, or you can listen to it, or you can just go through the slides. You'll start seeing how it's expanded. Chris? Did you have something?
I did, but I meant to ask it about the earlier part. So if you want to finish this and then I go back, whatever you want.
Okay. So me, Sandy, and Tom are going to be doing the class. It includes the class itself, but also the materials for people to go through this and go over it several times. And we recommend buying the book, The Presence Process, just to get the breathing thing in play. And by Michael Brown, we encourage that. and all the dates are there, and the pricing is $295 for the class. And so that's what we're going to be offering this in this section. So questions about that, or questions about other things, Chris? Yes.
So is this first section going to be a prerequisite to the second and the third?
Yes, it is. The reason is that I'm encouraging people to do it because I'm not fully sure how it would unfold if you were doing it in other sequences. I just don't know. I know that the process I'm doing would naturally unfold that way, and it'd be easier for people if they did it that way. If they're not doing it that way, I think there's going to be some disassociation. It's going to take longer to do it, and it's not going to flow together. And that is a challenge.
So that helps also in knowing how to put this class out there, that if people want to be part of this process, they need to be part of this first part of the process.
Yeah. The first part of the process is giving you the high ground. Remember, I told you, I want you to, I've taught this work from the bottom up. In fact, I've had struggles in which way I'm going to sequence the classes, going through it several ways to see what the best result would be. But the answer that I've come to is I have to start with the high ground, because in the past, I've started with the low ground and people don't have enough connection to themselves to make a comparison of the low ground to the high ground. Yeah. And they have to see themselves in their higher nature before they can appreciate that they don't need the lower nature, you know? And then the other thing is you have to have those two components. You have to have your processing done, your part of the whole process unhooked before you're able to work with other people in a equal and easy way. So that's how that works. So by the way, there are some notes here, like the creative presence document. Do not link to that, especially if it's a page that comes up on our website that's just black and white and has one colored button. If that is the page, that one will not work. I'm still working on that. It's one of those technical things that I wish I could solve, and I've been working on it for 3 days trying to make it work. Okay, Chris.
So my second question was about the presence process. Will that be more part of the second and the third?
No, it's really designed to go with the first class, and it's a discussion about the large picture of the process, and it gives you breathing instructions as well as other things to start with. And so I'm trying to get that out to people so they know what they're getting into when they sign up for this class. Okay. Cool. Yes, Ty.
Question. Are you still not sure what the next two sections, like whether there'll be a similar structure or 12?
It will probably be the same kind of thing, because here's what I'm doing. If you notice, I've got the two sections here. Building a transparent, non-reactive personality is the next section. And then practicing co-creativity in a CNG is the final section. But the bigger picture is inner and outer presence, because it's about bringing the whole thing together. And this first process is just creative presence, is really the first part of this, just to let you know. I'm focusing on that part first, because if we make great strides with that, then everything's going to start releasing in the person, and then who you are will bubble up. Now, I'm here to say to you that a lot of people have more concerns about, letting themselves go and just showing up. They think that there's something could go wrong if that happens. This isn't about egoic and self-importance. This is about creative power and creative ability and just accepting yourself as you are. And there's humility in that creative power. And, it's at the same time, it's not leaving anything on the table so that we would distract ourselves or minimize what we're here to do. Because I don't want you to create reasons why you're going to be not successful. I want you to be totally committed and available to engage the process. And if you disengage the process, it'll all release itself, and the things that need to fall out will fall out. And it'll all be guided by your own inner choice. It won't be me telling you to do anything. Just doing the process itself will work the issues out, which is so cool. I bet the most things I'm going to be doing is trying to answer questions about particular details and talking about what various experiences people are having going through it is really what is going to be the big issue. Yes.
How much of the book should we have read by first class?
Well, I give you
Or
I will say to you, I give you in the presence process a handout. I give you a two slide version of how you breathe. And so that's the only part that you absolutely need to read. The rest of it is, you can read at your rate. The first 100 pages of the book is more of a background thing. And then it goes into the processes, and the processes are what we're going to do in the second phase. So it's not the first segment. We're not going to do any of the processes there in the first segment. We're just going to be doing the processes that we have, and the breathing process itself. Okay. So if you're inclined, you can read the first 100 pages. That would be well and established more than you need to, and you can just do the 2 slides in that whole thing, and it'll be pretty complete. Okay. Any more about that? Did I answer it well?
I'm not clear about what's the first section. You said like we wouldn't need to read it for the first section, but it's more for the second section. Is that the number at the number 1 at the bottom?
Yes. If you look at the book, there's first 104 pages, right? Is all about breathing and the value of breathing and the obstacles that we go through in the process of doing the process. Okay. And that is useful if you read that before we start section 2. Otherwise, over the Christmas
You mean
time,
section 2 is December 5th, or is that the next
no,
CNG?
that's the next CNG thing.
Okay.
Okay. And the next CNG thing is a series of 12 classes. And the next CNG thing has 12 processes in the book. They only say they have 10, but I'm turning two of the last segments of the book into processes as well. So there's a part of the book that is just the processes themselves, and they're only like, each process is maybe 6 pages. So it's not a huge amount of reading, when you're in the process. But I'm going to be talking about it from my perspective as well, which is going to add a little bit of dimensionality to it.
And then it says right above that, at least 1 to 2 hours a week. That's of this book, reading this book or something.
Our processes are reading in in the first segment. That's all we're talking about.
Okay. Reading the slides.
Yes, reading the slides, and that's what we're doing. Okay. And
aren't you also going to have some written materials during this process?
I'm going to have some written materials that go with the slides. Yes, and it'll be if you've read some of the pyramid work stuff, I'm updating some of that to go with the slides. but the slides are the key issues. And I just want you to work on the slides for an experiential thing. Okay, did that answer it now, Ty? I want to make sure. Okay, good.
Yeah, this sounds in depth.
Yes, I'm really not I'm not messing around anymore. You know, I've tried to invoke people to jump into this process, and now I'm taking you there, and we're hanging out there. We're not going to stop doing it. You know, this is it. If there's any obstacle, you're going to know you're the obstacle, and we're going to talk about that. Okay. And I think it could be fun. I think it could be fun, but it'll definitely be interesting because I think the insights that will come out of this will be massive. Okay.
And I wanted to say this is could be a great class. You know, lots of us have had people who are like, what is higher alignment about? This could be a great place to bring people in because they don't necessarily have to know.
No, we don't.
This is a very different way in. So I just want to put that out there that this is a good time to extend the invitation if you have.
Yeah, if you think about it, today's discussion was more technical than a lot of the stuff we're going to end up doing on a class basis. And I'm going to be talking about sections the slides they're mostly experiential because we want to just focus on this one, you know, like each value gets a slide. Each virtue gets a slide, you know, one slide for each of these that helps you to focus yourself toward embodiment of that. That's all we're doing. Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
Chris, you're muted if you're trying to talk to us.
Thanks. I was trying the space bar. So this section starts on December 2nd in 2 weeks. Right now, you're thinking of the second section starting somewhere maybe in February, and then the third would start somewhere after that, right?
Yeah. That's what we're thinking right now, but we have to get feedback from everyone. And we're going to be customizing this based on where people are at. I was going to say, oops, am I going the wrong way? Yeah. Oops, no. Yeah, there we go. I was just going to say we have some links in here for what we're doing and more description in this class. And if you haven't read about your energies, that would be useful to start to do. And we also have links back here with the creative energies, because I just put this back here in case you needed it and you're new to the work. So that's that for that.
Larry, I was just going to follow up on your comment about getting feedback from people about how we progress. You know, Ty, one of the things that we've been discussing is in February, we might do the second section of this, but we might do attractions and then wait for the next cycle to do the next section of this. So it just depends on how people are responding to this, how they feel about it, whether they want some time to anchor it and download it before they move on. So that's the kind of feedback we'll be looking for as we go through this first section.
Yes, that is the goal. Okay, everyone. I think we've completed this. Are we in agreement?
No more questions from anybody?
Okay, everyone. Thank you very much for being part of this process, and I'm glad that you all were able to make it. And
so good to see all of you today.
Yeah, and also for having enough tenacity to engage a subject that seems very nebulous to a lot of people, and also to recognize that there could be a process that could be healthy for people to engage, because it helps them reorient how they operate in the world. Okay. With
You know,
that,
Larry,
yeah.
as we close up to this, the other thing I wanted to say is that, and maybe you've said this in a couple different ways today, but you know, basically the first half of this, a little bit more than first half of these 3 sections, is about developing our internal common neutral ground, and developing ourselves and creating a real anchor with our own common neutral ground. And then the end of it, the last half of it, is about taking this out into the world in other circumstances.
Yeah.
So this is really building, you know, from our core being so that we don't lose ourselves in this process.
Yeah, I if I haven't been clear, one of the things that Karen mentioned is that we have to start from an inner self and give ourselves permission to be who we are, and also to accept that we're great. Wouldn't that be nice? And it seems like there's so many things in the world conspiring to keep us from being in our, our beauty, truth, and goodness. And so I want people to, to go into that fully and to internalize that fully. And so that when we go to actually clearing away the debris, you know what the debris is that you want to clear away. And you know what you have to stop doing. And this breathing process is probably about 30% of it or more. It's really consequential in terms of how it works. And then the other part of it is at the end is how to reframe our boundaries and our autonomy so that we honor the other person in a flowing way, and we know how that feels, and we can do it on demand. That would be the third element of the process. Okay, everyone. So with that, I'm going to sign off and thank everybody for their participation today. And I really enjoyed having this time with you and going over all this.
So our first class is on December 2nd, 2 weeks from today. We'll be sending out some other notifications on Constant Contact. If you have any trouble registering, be sure to give me a call or send me an email and we'll get everything set up for you.
Great. Okay, everyone. Good night.
Thanks.
Right. Thanks.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Happy
Bye.
Thanksgiving.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving. That's absolutely a good point.
Thank
Good
you.
Good night.